to Turkey near Cappadokia, below our feet. There is the world's largest underground city, which made the history books rewritten. They've all left their mark up here on the surface, but also underground. Beneath a quiet town in central Turkey sits something the modern world only stumbled into by accident. And scientists who have just gone back with new tools are finding it is not what we thought it was. They are finding voids the maps do not account for, tunnels that lead somewhere they should not lead, connections to other sites nobody had confirmed. Every survey makes the unknown territory bigger, not smaller. We are talking about one of the largest hand-carved underground complexes on Earth. Structure 2 miles long, 2 miles wide, and underground, hidden in plain sight for centuries. And the deeper they go, the worse the mystery gets. The wall that should not be there. The year is 1963. The town is Derinkuyu in Nevşehir province, deep in central Turkey. The man swinging the hammer is a local resident, never formally named in early reports, just a homeowner doing a renovation he has done 100 times before. He breaks through the wall, expecting old brick, expecting dirt. He gets a passage. Instead, a passage that opens into a room that opens into another passage. He keeps going. He has to cover a doorway that leads to one of these caves. What he is breaking into is not a forgotten cellar. It is the upper edge of a hand-carved underground complex, dropping deeper into the rock than anyone in his town realizes. By the time experts reach the site and start clearing the tunnels, what they are looking at is so large that even in the years that follow, only a portion can safely be opened. The site is officially open to visitors in 1969 with around half of it accessible. And here is where it gets worse. As excavation work spreads out from that first basement opening, archaeologists keep finding more entrances tied into ordinary homes around the town. Some accounts describe more than 600 separate entrances hidden in private houses, each leading down into the same buried network. 600 doorways in ordinary homes nobody knew. The town above had been sitting on hundreds of doors into the city beneath it without realizing what those small, walled-off rooms in their basement actually were. The 1963 discovery did not reveal a hidden door. It revealed that the door had been everywhere all along. Locally, the place is named after the town Derinkuyu, deep, well in Turkish. The Cappadocian Greek inhabitants who lived here until 1923 had their own name for it, Malakopia, meaning soft. Both names are clues, and nobody saw it. People had been pulling water from those deep wells for generations. They never realized what they were drawing it through, a scale that does not fit. When archaeologists actually start surveying what is down there, the numbers keep getting worse. Derinkuyu reaches a depth of approximately 85 meters. That is the equivalent of a 25-story building flipped upside down and push it into the ground. But they were using it for storage because it's quite cold. But what they didn't know is that they were all connected. The site contains at least 8 levels, accessible today with researchers believing additional levels may exist below the parts that have been excavated and stabilized. Some sources go further, suggesting up to 18 levels in total, though only the upper portion is currently safe to enter. 85 meters, straight down, carved by hand with tools. It is the deepest underground city ever discovered in Cappadocia and the largest excavated underground city in Turkey. But the depth is not the part that stops people in their tracks. The capacity as estimates consistently place Derinkuyu's maximum capacity at up to 20,000 people along with their livestock and food stores. Stay with that for a second. 20,000 people. That is not a hideout. That is not a panic room. That is a small ancient city fully populated with families, animals, supplies, and infrastructure hidden inside a hill. And the deeper researchers look, the more they realize the people down there did not just survive, they lived. The complex includes living quarters, kitchens, food storage chambers, refectories, wine and oil presses, stables for livestock, chapels, and what appears to be a school. On the second level, there is a spacious room with a barrel-vated ceiling that exists nowhere else in Cappadocia's underground sites. Researchers identify it as a missionary or religious school with smaller side chambers that may have served as classrooms. A school 85 meters underground, carved into volcanic rock by people who had to plan on day one for their grandchildren to learn down there. That is the part that breaks people. Most ancient survival shelters look like what they were built for: a hole, a panic, room, somewhere to hide for a few days. Daringuyu does not look like that. It looks like a city that happens to be buried. Most ancient sites narrow down with study. Daringu has done the opposite. Before we go any deeper into how they breathe down there, how they sealed it from the inside, and what modern surveys are now finding in the rock around it, take 1 second to subscribe and turn on the bell. The next part of this story is the one that has scientists genuinely uncomfortable. If ancient mysteries with real unresolved questions are what you are here for, the easiest way to support the channel is to hit that subscribe button so the next one lands in your feed automatically. Air that should not reach that deep. Now, think about what 20,000 people actually means down there. Carving tunnels into rock is hard. Keeping the people inside those tunnels alive is harder. At 85 meters down, with 20,000 bodies, livestock, cooking fires, and oil lamps burning for light, oxygen runs out long before food does. So, how did they breathe? The builder solved it with a network of vertical shafts cut straight through the rock. More than 50 ventilation shafts run through the complex. The deepest of them reaches approximately 55 meters. See, there's like clear stairs and paths into different room. These shafts pulled fresh air down through every level, top to bottom, on natural convection alone. And here is where it gets worse. The shafts also doubled as well. The water sources were placed strategically. Many of them did not connect to the surface at all, which meant attackers above could not poison them. If raiders dropped something dangerous down what they thought was well, they often were not poisoning anything. They were just contaminating an empty air shaft. This is also why the temperature inside Daringu stays steady year-round. Cappadocia gets brutally cold in winter and burning hot in summer, but underground the air holds at a constant 13 to 15 degrees Celsius. Wine kept its quality. Grain did not spoil. People did not freeze, did not roast, and could stay below ground for weeks or months at a stretch when they had to. That is the part the new survey teams keep circling back to. Because if you can stay underground for months at a time in comfort with running air and protected water, you are not hiding, you are living. Doors that only open inward. The defensive engineering at Daringuyu is where this stops feeling like a curiosity and starts feeling like a fortress. Each level could be sealed off independently. The mechanism is one of the most quietly impressive details in the entire complex. Massive circular stone doors carved as single discs from solid rock, weighing somewhere between 200 and 500 kilograms each. Half a ton solid rock sealed from the inside in seconds. Some of these doors still sit in their original positions. Visitors can walk past them. The doors are millstone-shaped, set into recessed grooves, and designed to be rolled across a tunnel mouth from inside. There is a small hole carved through the center of each one, a peephole, and depending on the moment, a defensive opening. Designed security measures such as enormous rolling stone doors. Once a section was sealed from within, an attacker on the other side could not move it. The weight, the angle, the design made it almost impossible to shift from outside. Each floor had its own doors. The inhabitants did not have to defend the entire city at once. If invaders found a way in through one tunnel, they could be sealed off level by level, room by room, with the population retreating deeper into the rock. Now, think about what that actually means. The builders were not designing for a single attack. They were designing for the attack failing and the next one and the one after that. Layer by layer, floor by floor, 85 meters of fallback positions. The corridors are part of the same defensive logic. Many of the connecting passages between rooms and levels are deliberately narrow, in some cases as little as 70 to 80 centimeters wide. Anyone moving through has to pass single file, often crouched. That was the part the new survey couldn't explain casually. People do not engineer this much defensive precision into rock for a temporary problem. Why scientists keep coming back? Modern research at Daringuyu is not asking whether the city is real. That part is settled. The newer questions are the ones the title of this video is built around. How was something this big actually carved? Who started it? And the big one, how much of it is still down there, sealed off, uncurved, unmapped? Start with the carving. The rock is a stone called tuff, formed from ancient volcanic ash. It is soft enough to shape with hand tools when freshly exposed, and it hardens on contact with air, which is what gives the finished tunnels their structural stability. The average height must have been like 5 feet 4 or something. That property explains how it was possible. It does not explain how it was organized. Carving a single chamber into tuff is a long, careful job. Carving a multi-level city for 20,000 people with vertical shafts running 55 meters straight down requires planning, coordination, and the ability to remove enormous quantities of debris without anyone above ground noticing. Where did the rock go? Stay with that question for a second. Every chamber, every corridor, every ventilation shaft, every staircase between levels, all of it came out of the ground as physical material. Ton after ton of it. Somebody had to move it somewhere. There is no spoil heap on the surface that matches a city of this scale. The same builders who hid the entrances from invaders also hid the evidence of their own excavation from the historical record. That is one of the questions modern teams have not fully answered. The other focus is the wider region, and this is where the mystery genuinely opens up. Daranu is not alone. Cappadocia is honeycombed with underground sites. Around 36 underground cities have been formally identified across the region. Some are small, some are enormous, and several of them are connected. The most famous link runs between Derinkuyu and Capedokia, another large underground city about 8 to 9 kilometers away. Researchers have documented a tunnel system between the two. Significant portions of it have collapsed, and visitors cannot access them, but the connection itself is real, and it changes the entire frame of the story. Deringu is not a standalone site. It is one node in a much larger underground network, parts of which are still buried, sealed, or unexplored. By some estimates, the broader Cappadocian underground complex covers an area on the order of 445 kilometers. Kilometers with at least 200 known underground sites in it, and nobody knows how many of them are still linked underneath. In 1985, UNESCO added the rock sites and underground cities of the region, including Daranuyu and Kakla, to its World Heritage List as part of the Gur National Park and Rock Sites of Cappadocia listing. That recognition pulled academic and conservation focus onto the entire landscape, not just one site. Most ancient sites narrow down with study. Derinkuyu has done the opposite. Who built it and when? This is where the story stops being clean. Despite decades of work, there is no single agreed-upon answer for who originally carved Derinkuyu or when the first chambers were dug. The most widely cited theory points to the Phrygians, an Iron Age people of central Anatolia. Many scholars place the earliest tunnels at Derinkuyu in roughly the 8th to 7th centuries BC, but that is the conservative answer. The older one is more uncomfortable. Hittite artifacts have been recovered from inside Derinkuyu, real artifacts in the rock from a culture that ruled the region long before the Phrygians arrived. The cave architecture researcher Albertini examined the evidence and argued that the earliest levels of Derinkuyu may have been excavated as far back as around 1200 BC, when the Hittite kingdom was facing pressure from neighboring groups, the Phrygians among them. That theory is still debated. The artifacts are not. So, the answer to how old is this place depends on which expert you ask. The honest answer right now is we don't know. It is at least 2,800 years old. It might be more than 3,200. The earliest written hint comes from a Greek soldier. Around 370 BC, Xenophon of Athens is marching through Anatolia, leading the long retreat that would later become his Anabasis. Somewhere along the way, he writes about the locals. He describes people who live in houses dug into the ground with mouths like the opening of a well, but spacious below. Big enough to hold a family, big enough to hold goats, sheep, cattle, fowl, and stored supplies of grain and wine. The humans, he notes, descended by ladder. The animals had their own slope tunnel. He never names Derinkuyu. He doesn't have to. The description matches. Whatever Xenophon was looking at in 370 BC was already old. What modern researchers do agree on is that Derinkuyu was not built in one project. It was carved, expanded, and modified across centuries, possibly across more than 1,000 years. The Greek inscriptions, the chapels, and the Christian symbols inside the complex are clear evidence of heavy use during the Byzantine era. Not the Byzantine era, not the Hittite era. 1909. People were still using these cities to save their lives. Then 1923 happened. After the Greco-Turkish War, the two countries agreed to a population exchange. The Christian population of Cappadocia, including the people who had used and maintained Daranuyu for generations, was forcibly removed and relocated to Greece. They left their houses, they left their fields, and they took with them in their heads the only living memory of what was directly underneath the town. 40 years of silence. The town stayed. The water in the wells kept being drawn. Children played in the streets. Goats grazed the surrounding hills. Houses changed hands. New walls went up over old ones, and underneath all of it, the tunnels stayed exactly where the Cappadocian Greeks had left them, sealed by their absence rather than by any door. Nobody alive there knew what was beneath them anymore. And then in 1963, somebody knocked down a wall. Why build it this big? The why is more agreed upon than the who. Almost every serious study of Daranuyu and the surrounding network points to the same primary purpose: protection. Cappadocia sits in a stretch of Anatolia that has been crossed and contested by empires for thousands of years. Hittites, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Mongols, Ottomans, all of them moved through the region at one point or another. For the local population, surface life carried real risk. Underground life did not. The defensive features line up perfectly with that purpose. Hidden entrances, sealable corridors, half-tone-on stone doors, independent floors, water sources protected from poisoning, storage capable of supporting thousands of people through a long siege. Daranuyu has done the opposite. What is still hidden? Even after 60-plus years of work, only a portion of Daranuyu is open to the public. Most sources describe roughly half of the city as accessible. Some travel guides put the figure considerably lower, with parts of the lower levels closed for safety. The deeper floors are reached through narrow vertical staircases cut directly into the rock, and several lower sections remain off-limits because of structural concerns. Outside Daranuyu itself, the picture is even more open-ended. Surveys suggest the Cappadocia region likely contains many more underground complexes than have been formally excavated. With over 200 multi-level sites already documented and only a handful studied, archaeologists keep noting the same uncomfortable possibility. Hundreds more underground spaces may still be sealed beneath modern villages, fields, and hillsides. Some are known to local residents who use them as cellars without realizing they connect to larger systems. Others are likely completely unmapped. Modern tools, ground-penetrating radar, digital topographic survey, magnetometry have started filling in some of the blanks slowly. Excavating an underground city is expensive. It is also dangerous because the same tough rock that allowed the original builders to carve so deeply requires careful handling now to avoid collapse. Funding, access through private property, and the sheer number of potential sites mean that systematic exploration has barely begun. Stay with that for a second. The site we are talking about, Daranuyu, the deepest known with its 8 confirmed levels, its 600 entrances, its 55-meter ventilation shafts, is the one we have looked at the most, and we still don't know how much of it is unexplored. Now, multiply that by 200 other sites in the same region. What they find below the 8th level is where this stops being archaeology and starts being a question about how much of this country is hollow. Why Daranuyu stands apart. Plenty of ancient sites are impressive. Most of them, when archaeologists arrive, are in some state of ruin. Walls collapsed, roofs gone, function reconstructed from fragments. Daranuyu is different. The city is not a ruin, it is intact. The tunnels are still walkable. The stone doors are still in place. The ventilation shafts are still pulling air. The rooms are still recognizable for what they were used for. You can stand inside the barrel-vaulted school chamber and see why researchers identify it as a school. You can look at a half-ton stone door wedged into its original slot and understand exactly how the defense worked. You can trace the path of a 55-meter ventilation shaft from the lower levels and see daylight at the top. The site explains itself. That is part of what makes the modern questions hit so hard. Most ancient mysteries are mysteries because the evidence is gone. Daranguyu's evidence is still there, carved into the rock in front of you, lit and walkable and dated, and we still cannot answer the basic questions. It also stands apart for what it integrates. Most ancient survival sites do one thing well. Daranuyu does almost everything at once. Air, water, food storage, defense, religion, education, and communal life, all built into the same structure, all functioning together. The distinction between shelter and settlement essentially collapses. The people who built and expanded Daranuyu were not running from anything when they were down there. They were living. They just happened to be doing it under 85 meters of volcanic rock. That is the part the new survey couldn't explain, and the part the next survey probably won't either. The deeper they go, almost every line of inquiry at Daring eventually circles back to the same uncomfortable position. The site is partially understood, generously documented in places, and still profoundly incomplete. Researchers know roughly how the ventilation worked. They are less certain how the carving was organized at the labor level. They know the city was used by Christians, by Byzantines, by Cappadocian Greeks. They are not certain who started it. They know it was meant for protection. They are not certain why protection demanded an entire underground city. They know it connects to Kakla. They are not certain how many more cities it once linked to. They know more than half of it is open today. They are not certain what is below the parts that are not. Each generation of archaeologists arrives with better tools and finds more questions than answers. That is unusual. Most ancient sites narrow down with study. The lines of evidence converge. The story tightens. Daring has done the opposite. 60 years after a man with a sledgehammer broke through a basement wall, the unknown territory around what he found has gotten bigger, not smaller. Ground-penetrating radar surveys keep showing voids the maps don't account for. The Kakla tunnel keeps suggesting more connections than the visible evidence can confirm. The Hittite artifacts keep pushing the dates older. And the 600-plus entrances, the 2,000-plus regional sites, the 445 square kilometers broader complex, none of it is finished being counted. If you have made it this far, leave a comment with one word. Which part of Daring would you actually want to walk through if you had the chance? The stone door corridors, the ventilation shafts, the underground school, or the deepest level, the one that is still sealed off that no modern researcher has been allowed below? Drop your answer in the comments. Like the video if you would actually go down there. And if you want more stories about ancient sites where the science is real and the questions are still open, hit subscribe so the next one finds you. Daring is not a hidden city in the romantic sense. It is documented, measured, photographed, partially mapped, sitting beneath an ordinary Turkish town. And that is exactly what makes it strange. It is not lost. It is right there. We have been walking on top of it for centuries. We are still finding new questions about it. Entire worlds, it turns out, can sit directly beneath our feet, hand-carved and waiting, while life on the surface goes on with no idea they are there. Daring is the clearest proof of that we have ever found, and it almost certainly is not the last one.